I'd never imagined finding a job this far out in the sticks. After a series of bad decisions, I needed a fresh start, and the tiny town of Fenwick, Vermont seemed like the perfect place to disappear. Nestled in the hills, surrounded by thick forests, Fenwick had a population of just 500 people, a place where people mostly kept to themselves. Perfect for someone who needed to slip under the radar. I found the job offer on a weathered bulletin board outside the general store posted by a man named Evan Harper, owner of Fenwick's only delivery service. Driver needed for rural deliveries. Night hours, excellent pay. Apply in person. The excellent pay part caught my attention. I didn't ask questions. I called the number and arranged to meet him that evening. Evan's house was perched on the edge of Fenwick, surrounded by acres of farmland that seemed to stretch on forever. The place had a rustic charm, the wood darkened by years of rain and sun. Evan himself was a man in his 50s, tall with a thick gray beard and worn eyes that looked like he'd seen more than his fair share of oddities. "Well, you're here," he said, squinting at me from the porch. "The job's yours if you want it. The pay's good, but the rules, well, you'll understand soon enough." I nodded, eager for the work. I needed the distraction. "The rules are simple," he continued, leading me to a rusty old truck parked by the barn. "But they have to be followed. It's for your own safety." He handed me a piece of paper, its edges curling, as if it had been passed down through generations. The rules were written in black ink, careful and precise. I felt a chill run through me as I read them. 1. Deliveries begin exactly at 11:00 p.m. Must end before 4 a.m. 2. Follow the route map precisely. Do not take any shortcuts, and do not stray from the marked roads. 3. Do not stop if you see someone on the side of the road, no matter who they are. 4. Never accept any food or drink from the delivery recipients. 5. If you hear knocking on the truck door while driving, do not open it. Keep driving. 6. If the radio turns on by itself, immediately turn it off and continue your route. 7. Never make eye contact with the people who receive the deliveries. 8. Always drive with the windows rolled up. If you see anything strange outside the truck, do not look twice. 9. At every stop, wait for the porch light to flash twice before delivering the package. If there is no flash, do not deliver the package. 10. If you hear your name called while driving, do not stop. Keep your eyes on the road and keep driving. 11. Return to the warehouse by 4 a.m. If you are late, the consequences are yours to bear. The rules made my stomach twist, but the paycheck Evan promised was too good to refuse. I thought it was just some eccentric farmer's way of keeping things orderly. What was the harm in a few strange rules? I signed the contract without asking more questions. He gave me the keys to the truck and handed me a map of the route. "Remember, stick to the rules, and you'll be fine." I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I shrugged it off. I had a job now, and that was all that mattered. The first night, I set out from the warehouse at exactly 11 p.m., the truck's engine sputtering to life. The roads around Fenwick were narrow and winding, lined with thick woods. There was no street lighting, only the faint glow of the moon above. It was the kind of isolation that could drive a man mad. Perfect for someone like me, who preferred solitude. The first few stops were uneventful. I followed the map, made the deliveries, and followed the rules without question. At each stop, I flashed my headlights 3 times, waited for the porch light to flash twice, then left the package at the designated spot without speaking to anyone. The people I encountered were all strange in their own way, reserved, distant, almost as if they didn't want to be seen. But they never made a move to engage. The 4th delivery, however, was where things started to feel Wrong. I pulled up to a small, dilapidated house just outside of Fenwick. The porch light was flickering, and there was a strange feeling in the air, like the very woods surrounding the house were holding their breath. I checked the map. This was the right address. I honked my horn 3 times, waited for the porch light to flash twice, but nothing happened. The light flickered again, but no response. I should have followed the rule, leave if there's no flash, but something made me hesitate. I wasn't sure why, but I felt compelled to get out of the truck and approach the door. As I stepped onto the porch, a voice whispered from the shadows, "Leave the package. We've been waiting for you." I froze, my heart pounding. The voice didn't sound human. It was soft, breathy, almost like it was coming from the trees themselves. But I knew the rule. Never look at the people receiving the deliveries. I quickly turned and got back in the truck. My hands were shaking as I locked the doors and started the engine. The voice was still there, echoing in my mind as I sped away back onto the road. The next few stops were uneventful, but the sense of being watched lingered in the back of my mind. The woods were too still, too silent. The rules seemed silly at first, but after the encounter at that old house, I started to wonder if there was something more to them. At one of the later stops, the radio came on by itself. A strange static filled the cab, followed by a voice that seemed to crackle through the air. "Do you see us, driver?" I quickly reached for the dial and turned it off. I remembered the rule: if the radio turns on by itself, turn it off immediately. I tried to focus, but my nerves were getting the best of me. My eyes darted to the woods whenever I passed a shadow, but I never saw anything. It wasn't until the final delivery that night that everything fell apart. I arrived at a large, old farmhouse, far out in the woods. The house was isolated with nothing around for miles. The porch light was on, but it wasn't flashing. It was simply steady, too steady. I didn't hesitate. The rule said to leave the package only when the porch light flashes twice, but there was no flash. Something in my gut told me that I needed to leave and go back. But as I started to drive away, I heard something. A soft knock, tap, 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 from the side of the truck. I froze. My hands clutched the steering wheel as the knocking continued, each tap growing louder. Then a voice, one I didn't recognize, called out from the woods, "Come back, we're waiting." I remembered the rule. Never stop if you hear your name called. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, my heart racing as I sped through the darkness. The knocking didn't stop, but I didn't dare look. I didn't stop until I was back at the warehouse, the truck's engine still running. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the envelope with my pay. Thomas was waiting for me. His eyes didn't look surprised at all. "You followed the rules, right?" he asked quietly, as if he already knew the answer. I nodded, but my voice caught in my throat. What? What was that? The knocking? The voice? Thomas's expression darkened. "You've been marked now. They're watching you. From now on, every delivery will be harder. And the rules, they get stricter. But if you want to keep going, you'll stick to them. There's no turning back." I stood there in silence, the weight of his words sinking in. "Come back tomorrow night. We'll see if you're ready for what's next." I nodded, but deep inside, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what came next. The next day passed in a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me, like something in the woods was following my every move, waiting for me to slip up. By the time night fell, I found myself standing outside the truck, staring at the faded map, my mind racing with questions. What had I gotten myself into? What kind of job involved rules so strange, so specific, and yet so terrifyingly real? I couldn't stop thinking about the knocking, the voice, and how I'd narrowly escaped whatever it was that had been waiting for me at that last stop. It was one thing to follow rules when you thought they were just odd quirks. It was another thing entirely when you started to realize that these rules were the difference between life and something darker. As the clock inched toward 11 p.m., I climbed into the truck, the weight of the night ahead sinking in. I didn't want to go. I wanted to quit, pack my bags, and leave Fenwick. But the money kept me tied to the job. The thought of escaping my past, of paying off my debts, of leaving behind my mistakes, was too powerful to ignore. I pulled out of the warehouse exactly at 11 o'clock p.m., just as the rules demanded. The headlights flickered on, cutting through the thick blanket of fog that had settled over the town. The air was damp and heavy, and the road ahead seemed like an endless stretch of darkness. It felt different tonight. There was something in the air that felt wrong, heavier than before. The first stop was uneventful, but by the time I made it to the second delivery, I started to feel it, the pull of something watching me. The shadows between the trees seemed to move as I passed, just at the edge of my vision. I followed the rules carefully, but the eerie feeling of being followed gnawed at me. When I made my third delivery, I noticed something unusual. The recipient, a man in his late 60s, his face weathered by time, was waiting on the porch, his eyes fixed on me as I approached the truck. He didn't move until I was halfway up the driveway. I gave the headlights 3 flashes, but this time, he didn't respond with the usual 2 flashes. His porch light stayed steady, never wavering. I was supposed to leave, according to the rules, but the man stepped forward, a faint smile on his face. "Don't worry, son," he called out, his voice thick and raspy. "I've been waiting for you." I froze, unsure of what to do. His words were too specific, too familiar. There was no way he could have known I was delivering to his house. I remembered the rule, never engage with the recipients, but I couldn't help it. Something about him pulled me closer. He took another step forward. "I've been waiting a long time for someone like you." My heart pounded. I should leave. I should get in the truck and go. But before I could move, the man whispered something that chilled me to the bone. "You won't make it through the night, not with them after you." Before I could react, I heard the unmistakable sound of a knock, tap, 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 from the side of the truck. I didn't waste any more time. I turned on my heel and sprinted back to the truck. My pulse raced in my ears, and my hands fumbled for the keys. I slammed the door shut and locked it, desperately cranking the engine. The man's voice came again, quieter now, but I could still hear the words. "They're already on their way. You'll never escape them." I threw the truck in reverse and sped off, my tires spinning on the gravel. I didn't look back. The woods seemed darker than ever, pressing in around me, the trees twisting like the fingers of some unseen giant. And still, the knocking came, louder now, from the side of the truck. It sounded like it was inside the vehicle, just inches away from my ear. I didn't stop driving until I was back at the warehouse. By the time I pulled in, it was well past 3 a.m., and the sky was beginning to lighten. I barely managed to park the truck before I stumbled out, my legs weak beneath me. Evan was waiting, as if he knew exactly how the night had gone. "You followed the rules," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of something darker beneath. "You did well, but it gets harder from here. You have to be ready." I didn't ask what he meant. I just nodded, feeling the weight of the rules pressing down on me more than ever. The man's words echoed in my head, the haunting reminder that something, someone, was always waiting for me, always watching, always listening. "Come back tomorrow," Evan added. "There are more deliveries and more rules to follow. Don't forget them." The next few nights were like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Each delivery brought with it a new sense of dread, a new test of the rules that I could no longer ignore. I began to see things, shadowy figures darting between trees, strange lights flickering in the distance. Each time I followed the rules, I survived. But when I hesitated, when I broke even the smallest rule, something changed. One night, I broke the rule about never accepting food or drink. The recipient, an older woman, insisted that I take a cup of tea as a thank you for delivering the package. I took the tea mostly out of politeness, though a small voice in the back of my head screamed not to. The moment I swallowed the first sip, I felt my stomach churn, my vision blur. The world around me seemed to tilt, and I stumbled back toward the truck, my heart pounding in my chest. I barely managed to get inside the truck before I lost consciousness. When I woke, the night had deepened and I was no longer on the road. The truck was parked in the middle of the woods, the trees looming over me like silent watchers. The radio was playing, but no one was in the cab with me. I reached for the door handle, but before I could open it, I heard a voice, soft and slow, like a whisper carried on the wind. "Stay with us, delivery boy. You're just one of us now." I tore my eyes away, my hands shaking as I restarted the truck, the engine sputtering to life. I didn't stop driving until I reached the warehouse. When I finally arrived, I was greeted by Evan, his eyes unreadable. He didn't say a word about the night's incident. He didn't need to. By now, I had learned that Fenwick and its people weren't just odd, they were part of something much older, much darker. The rules that Evan had given me weren't just eccentricities. They were survival tactics, and breaking them had consequences. The next night, something happened that made me question everything. As I was finishing up my final delivery for the night, I saw something moving in the woods. It was too fast, too silent. My mind screamed at me to keep driving, to ignore it, but my curiosity got the better of me. I slowed down. It was a woman. At least she looked like one. She stepped into the beam of my headlights, her features pale and twisted. Her eyes were black as midnight and her mouth stretched too wide. The rules flashed in my mind like a warning beacon. Do not stop if you see anyone on the side of the road. Do not make eye contact. But I couldn't move. I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. She raised a hand, beckoning me to stop. "Come closer," she whispered. "You're not safe out here." I remembered the rules. I slammed my foot on the gas and sped away, my heart pounding in my chest. When I returned to the warehouse, Evan was waiting for me. He knew. "You broke the rule, didn't you?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, too scared to speak. "You've been marked," he said. "There's no going back now." The final test came sooner than I expected. I was deep into the woods, following the last delivery route, when the truck's headlights flickered and the radio turned on by itself. I turned it off immediately, but it came on again. I knew what it meant. I had broken the rules too many times. The Mola were coming. The radio crackled with static, and then a voice I knew all too well. James, we've been waiting for you." I didn't stop. I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the road and pushed the pedal to the floor. I was done. I had followed the rules, broken them, and now it was time to face the consequences. As I drove into the night, I realized one thing. There was no escaping Fenwick. The night felt different now. The woods surrounding Fenwick seemed darker, deeper, as if the shadows themselves were alive and watching. The radio crackled again, louder this time, and my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles ached. The rules had always seemed like paranoid guidelines, until now. Now they felt like lifelines, and I had broken too many of them. The mola were coming. I didn't know where they would appear from or when, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Each delivery, each strange encounter had led me closer to this moment. The air inside the truck was thick with tension, and my breath came in shallow gasps as I stared ahead, determined to get through the night. The truck bounced along the rough road, and as the minutes passed, the eerie silence of the woods outside felt like a pressure on my chest. Suddenly there it was, a flash of movement in the trees. A figure, tall and thin, darting between the trunks, its arms stretching too long, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. My heart pounded. Stay on the road. Don't look. I repeated the rules in my mind like a mantra, trying to drown out the rising fear. My foot pressed harder on the gas pedal, but the figure in the trees kept pace, darting ahead and then falling behind, as if it knew exactly where I was going. I didn't dare look into the rearview mirror. I could feel their eyes on me, though. They were watching from the woods, drawing closer with every passing second. When I reached the final delivery location, the truck seemed to slow on its own, as if something was holding me back. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The rules screamed in my head. Deliver the package, leave quickly, don't make contact. I pulled up to the isolated cabin. It was the last delivery on my route, and as the headlights swept over the porch, I saw the dim flicker of the porch light, a sign of confirmation. I flashed my headlights 3 times, as per protocol, and waited. Nothing. I checked my watch. 1:50 a.m. The rules told me to wait. The porch light stayed steady, never flashing back in response. I should have driven off, but I hesitated. Too long, too uncertain. And then the voice came. James, I've been waiting for you. The words were soft, but they carried the weight of something ancient and familiar. It was as if they came from the depths of my own mind, from a place I didn't want to acknowledge. My hand froze on the door handle. The figure on the porch stepped into the light, and for a moment I thought it was her. I thought it was Hannah. But her features were wrong. Her skin was too pale, and her eyes glinted like shards of glass. Her smile stretched too wide, Marie, and her arms hung loosely by her sides like the limbs of a marionette. This wasn't her. I didn't have time to think. I slammed the truck into reverse, tires spinning as I backed away from the porch, my breath coming in gasps. The figure didn't move, but I saw the flicker of something, like a shadow, crossing the porch behind her, something darker and more twisted. I had broken the rule. I had engaged. The radio turned on once again, the static filling the cab of the truck. A voice crackled through, distorted and guttural. James! James, you should have stayed. The forest has already claimed you. I didn't look back. I floored the accelerator and tore out of the driveway, my heart thudding in my chest. The truck jerked over the uneven road, the headlights slicing through the night like blades, but the figure was still there, still watching, just at the edge of the trees. The road twisted ahead, winding deeper into the woods. I could feel the presence behind me now, the cold breath of the creatures in the shadows. Don't stop. Don't stop. And then, something more horrifying happened. A shape appeared in the road ahead. I slammed on the brakes, heart lurching in my chest. The truck screeched to a halt, and I stared ahead, eyes wide, trying to process what I was seeing. A woman. She stood in the middle of the road, her long hair blowing in the wind, her arms outstretched. The rules. I had to keep driving. I knew this. But it wasn't her. The face was wrong. It was a distorted mask of familiarity, twisted into something monstrous. Her eyes weren't human. They were black and deep, like endless pits. And they stared into me, as if she was looking directly into my soul. "James, come back. Come back to me. I've been waiting." My hand hovered over the door handle. "Don't open the door. Don't look. Don't respond." But there was a voice in my head, a whisper, a temptation. I almost stepped out of the truck. Almost. But then, in a burst of clarity, I remembered. The rules. I had to follow the rules. I slammed the door shut, locking it immediately. The engine roared to life, and I threw the truck into drive, speeding past her. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her in the distance, standing in the middle of the road, unmoving. Her figure faded into the woods, and then, without warning, it was gone. I didn't stop until I reached the warehouse. I didn't even look at the road ahead as I pulled in, parking in a frenzy, my hands still trembling on the steering wheel. I was done. The truck sat in the lot like a waiting predator, its headlights dim and lifeless in the cold morning air. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, my mind still reeling from the events of the night. The air felt heavier now, oppressive, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Evan was waiting for me, standing outside the warehouse, his face hard and unreadable. His gaze flicked to the truck and he nodded, almost as if he'd expected this. "You've seen them now, haven't you?" he asked, his voice steady. I nodded. There was no denying it anymore. The mola were real. The rules were real. "And you broke them," he said. "You engaged. You saw the faces in the woods." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Evan's expression softened. "You knew the price, James. Once you break the rules, there's no going back. You're part of Fenwick now." I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Now you're marked. They'll follow you. Watch you. The woods will always be hungry for someone who's broken the rules." I felt the weight of his words like a stone in my chest. The mola didn't forget. They didn't forgive. And I had given them what they wanted, an invitation to follow me, to torment me for the rest of my life. "You'll never be free," Evan continued, his voice almost a whisper now. "But you'll keep delivering, you'll keep following the rules, because if you don't, Fenwick will claim you. Completely." And with that, he turned and walked back inside, leaving me standing in the cold, knowing that the woods would never let me go.